This is Janice.
And I'm Sarah N.
And we're your hosts for Explore This, a podcast for the modern day working professional.
Each week, we explore actionable insights on how you can thrive personally and professionally.
Freda Liu is one of the most recognisable voices and names here in Malaysia. She has lived and breathed business in the past decade with Malaysia's only business radio station, BFM 89.9, and is currently the producer and presenter of The Shift Asia, a talk show focused on sustainability stories. Freda is a multi-talented powerhouse communicator and has been skillfully merging her experience as a journalist, broadcaster, MC, and moderator over the years. We're so happy to have you here in the studio today, Freda.
Thank you. In the opening chapter of your book, you've mentioned that every decade of your life is a different stage which has taught you different lessons. And I thought it would be apt for us to open today's conversation with, how would you title the current stage of your life today?
Women generally sort of change their life every 10 years, have different views and different things happening. Maybe there's also marriage, children, work and everything. And so at this point in my life, I think it's just to see what's out there, what's possible, what's happening. I remember when I quit full time with the last job, it was a case of, you know what? I've been working for 30 years. I still have to apply for leave. And not that it doesn't get approved, but the fact that I still had to apply for leave was just like, enough, and at that point in my life, it's like my son's in university, I'm at different points, right? I don't know if I'll be able to think that way 10 years ago. So I admire all these young 20 plus 30 people say, hey, I'm just going to go out and do it. So I think that's where I am at this point in life.
We're going to kind of go back a few years and talk about your childhood because from a very young age, we know that you've been very actively involved in things like storytelling, you were involved in debates as well. So we're curious to find out a little bit more about how you actually discovered this gift or knack of yours when it comes to communication.
So I remember in school, there were these opportunities and everybody say, try it. I think also teachers, right? Teachers play a very important role. I don't think I saw it in myself. And the teachers probably saw it and say, why don't you participate? Why don't you take part in this competition? Why don't you do this? There's this debate. Why don't you participate? Okay. And I think I was just open to participating. And then you find out this is your point of discovery. But I have to give credit to teachers who saw something in you and you didn't realize it.
Spotted the talent within you.
I guess, right? And you also have to take the initiative or have the guts to say, okay, I'll give it a shot, right? And I think when you're young, you have no baggage. You have no fear. Do law, right?
Go for it.
Just go for it, right? It's a small town, but the storytelling was so interesting. I suddenly remembered that when I was writing a book. Oh yeah, I took part in a storytelling competition, right? And my first time on radio was with Radio Television Brunei, where they had a storytelling competition, and I came out second. I was like, wow, I didn't realize it. Because you had no expectations, right? So that was pretty good. Who was number one? I can't remember.
Somehow you continued to venture down this path of, communications and eventually being where you are now. So why did you decide to actually go on and invest yourself further and hone this craft of yours?
I had no inclination to move into this area at all, right? You've done your debate, you've done all these sort of things. When I finished my degree, I got a degree in marketing and it's like, okay, fine, I'll do public relations, right? I wanted to pursue that as a career. It was totally accidental how I got into broadcasting. And I would say it is divine. I had to come back to Malaysia in a hurry because my father was very ill. And I wrote about that in the book. My father was very ill. I was trying to find some work in Australia, but even then came back to take care of my dad. Now, if it wasn't for my dad being ill, I wouldn't have come back so early. Now, when I came back, I had to take care of my dad for a couple of months and then he passed on. And during that period while I was taking care of my dad, a friend of mine said, hey, Radio Television Malaysia in Kuching had something on and they're looking for a host. I said, whatever, I had no idea. I said, I can't, I'm taking care of my dad. A few months later, my dad passed. And then after that, my friend called me and said, they're still looking for someone. I said, wow, what is this that you've asked me for months what it is, right? And my mom said, yeah, go for it. Just see what it's all about. So I met this guy and I didn't know who he was. We were just talking. There was no audition to speak of, right? And then my friend said, oh, you got the job. I said, oh, great. Again, I have no idea. I have to turn up for rehearsal and I find out that this show was a live telecast. Remember this, children, live before Astro. Live before Astro where people actually turn on and watch the TV. It was a live telecast that was aired in Malaysia and Singapore. And that here, it happened to be in Kuching. And they had a male host that spoke in Malay and they needed a female host that was Sarawakian, that could speak English, right? And I'm like,
That's you.
no, it's a live show. I have no experience. I'm like, okay, no audition. So I got it. Now, because it was a government relations thing, right? And it was held in little old Kuching, the heads of both RTM and what is now Media Corp were there, and they saw me. And the guy said, if you ever come to KL, we've got a job for you. And no way did I even want to pursue this full time. I said, if it's a part-time thing, I don't mind. And I got into news reading, and that was how I got into it. And I still never thought of it as a career. It was, I had my full-time job working for the respectable IBM, and the career, that's the one that pays the bills. But that was the broadcasting was the part-time thingy, right? Until BFM came about. But I never let go of that skill. So I was doing TV and radio news and all at that time. So it was totally accidental, and I would say it's definitely divine how the doors always open for me in this path. Sometimes, God has gifted you with this particular thing, and he will open the door. So when I tell this story, until you understand where I'm coming from, when I talk about the divine, it really is divine. Yeah.
Yeah, I love how you've described it in your book as like, the way you've stumbled into the world of broadcasting, because you describe it very rightly so as one of the most bizarre and divine experiences, right? And that little intervention has led you to go down this path that you're currently on right now. So what did that establishing years of your life teach you?
I still love what I do in terms of communications. I find there's so many aspects of communication, from writing to speaking to teaching. So I find that is probably my area, right? And also at the same time, try different things, lecturing, whatever and just see if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it works, great, you've just learned a new skill. I love that aspect. And I find that at the end of the day, I love doing the interviews. I love talking to you guys and finding out about your life. That is, I think, ultimately what interests me. Just trying out different things, and even things that make you uncomfortable. Then that's the only way to learn. And then you can say, okay, I tried it. It's not for me. You can't say something's not for me if you haven't tried it.
You talked about trying a lot of things and not knowing how things are without trying. And you truly lived it, because you actually did a lot of exploration, right? What inspired you to have that sort of mentality and attitude even from that very tender age?
One of the values I love is probably freedom. If a job allows me the freedom to do other things, I think that is an underlying value for me. But I just love to try out different things. One thing I haven't tried yet, which is stand-up comedy. That one really takes guts and really takes courage. So I really admire comedians, stand-up comedians, when they do this, because it's like, wow. Don't do anything thinking of the money, right? That's the wrong perspective. But do it because it's experimentation. What I learned from something like this, like for example, the whole thing about choral singing, I want to take what I learned from that, how to enunciate, how to pronounce your words. Because when you sing, every syllable, every word have to be said properly, right? And that's important. And because when you sing, that comes across. You don't realize it, but then the choral master say you have to enunciate every word, because that comes across when you sing. And you think, okay, oh wow, you have to do that when you're reading the news. So you don't know what connects, right? When you're learning something like that, who knew that choral singing would connect back to news reading? But you learn from different things, put it all together and say, okay, I get it now, little things that goes in my head, who knows?
I would say you're a very naturally curious person.
Yes, that I for sure. And I was always telling people that thought in life is, I don't know what I don't know, right? I don't know what I don't know. And then when you discover something new, it's like, oh, I know I don't know that, or at least, but I know I don't know something, right? And then you try to find out a little bit more. So, I just came back from a holiday, and little things like, hey, I didn't know this place has this place has this, right? It's so easy right now, because growing up, we didn't have Google. Growing up, you had to scour the newspapers, you have to do research. So with Google, wow, there's so many things you can
now
learn.
ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot.
My goodness, so many things. Right.
You've spoken about how you take a lot of courses and you do certifications as well, from time to time. Are these things that you sort of plan out at the start of the year, identify things that you want to learn and grow in? What's that process like? Okay,
so around November of each year, I look at the year that has happened. So sometimes it could be a skill that I want to learn or something of interest, right? So the couple of years ago, I did the design thinking. And then the whole concept, the whole model of design thinking whether it's to a product or a service or to myself, I was so interested. So it's a new thing I want to learn. This year, I want to learn finance for non-finance people. In November, I just look at the year. Oh, great, I've learned something new. What else? If I want to pursue certain things, what other skills, what other things do I need to do to enhance my life? But it could be something fun. It could be like, I want to take up salsa. In so many areas of life, not just that one aspect. I look at myself as well. Am I a new and improved version every year? Your handphone, the latest or not? Every year, look for the latest handphone. So if you are looking for a new handphone every year, why would someone work with you if you are not a new and improved version every year?
Wow. I like the thought process of like, how are we upskilling and upgrading ourselves the same way we upgrade our OS on our phone?
Exactly. You could be on the lookout for the latest phone and everything. So if you expect that of a product, what more do people expect that of you, right? But it's just more from me. I always like to laugh. You say, you can talk about everything. I say, I can. I said, I can talk a little bit about everything. Maybe something, not in depth in some things, but, it's just enough
to,
But it's just great conversation. One time I talked to this guy about bird watching. And it's like, wow, what goes into bird watching? What equipment do you bring? Who knew, right? Who knew? Such an interest. Go to Fraser's Hill. You meet some people there and you start talking about bird watching.
And I would like to make reference to page 37 of your book, Life's a Stage, and a quote from you, which, I found to be very, very memorable, and it really stood out to me. And this quote says, "It is the combination of all of our imperfections that make us vulnerable and beautiful." And you also made reference to the Japanese design philosophy, wabi-sabi, which basically means that, where things are all made by hand and they're all usually kind of imperfect, but really that imperfection is the thing that gives, that particular item the beauty and the artisanal quality. And so this leads me to the next question, which is about the stage in your life when you went through a very challenging period, going through a divorce with, your now ex-husband. And you've described that season and that stage of your life as one which is a crucible for the decisions that you've made in the past decade. And, reading that book, one thing that occurred to me, which was very personal, and I felt it coming through very much from your book, is that there are some lessons in vulnerability that you learn and you took away. And vulnerability is actually something we as adults need to learn, because I think the world has told us or subconsciously taught us that it's not safe to be vulnerable. It's something that we have to learn. It's a muscle that we have to exercise, and being really intentional about it. And I think that really came through in that part of your book. You spoke about this on the TED Talk stage as well, on the title Better Not Bitter. And one of the quotes from there is, "When everything else was bleak, all you could say to yourself every day was, you want to come out of this better and not bitter." Could you share with our audience a little bit about that season of your life? It was admittedly very difficult, painful, heart-wrenching one. And how did better and not bitter look like for you every day?
Okay, so again, better not bitter. I think it was Nelson Mandela in his very long words. He had a longer phrase than that. So it was a very challenging period. And I think that moment I was coasting. Life was good. Life was good, but you always felt that something was missing. That period when this was all going on, you also have to look at yourself and say, where did I go wrong? It's easy, like I said, to blame someone for something, but nothing just happened like this. You also always have to look at where I've gone wrong. During that period when I said I didn't know what better was, I did not want to turn out to be, there are some people, women, right, who come out of these sort of situations very angry in life. And I just knew that I did not want that to be me. And I just didn't know how to be better, right? You just don't know how, but it says, I don't know what better looks, God, but make sure that I come out of this not a bitter person, because I have a son.
Yeah.
I have a son, and I don't want my son to use that as his modeling, as him seeing this every day. But you want your son to also see that mom's vulnerable, but that mom can come out of this with the help of God. That's important. You still had no answers, but okay, first of all, get right with God. Get yourself aligned with God. And I would say, you cannot give if your cup is not full. So fill that up first, right? Fill the spiritual side, whatever it is for you. And for me, that was my God. And fill that up, get right, understand more. Why are you doing this to me? Okay? Just to that. And you won't get your answer immediately, but you just have to trust in that process. And it was very difficult. Then the second thing is looking at my wheel of life. You get your spiritual side. What do you what do you do then? So I think the other thing was healthy ways lah. So I said, okay, let's get into exercise. Exercise because exercise gives you healthy chemicals, right? And I think that also helped, chemically to help me be better. Then you explore other things. I wasn't even looking at finance at that point, but looking at how then is my relationship with my son, making sure the family aspect, that part is sorted. So that's the family side. And then, of course, making sure work is still okay. So that's how you sort of like look at improving. And you don't realize that as you do all these little things over the years, it's going to be different for different people. For me, it's over the years, it gets better, right? It gets better. And you realize, okay, that's a process. So that's my formula. And I hope that it can work for other people as well. But it's also your timing. I have to trust the process, that the timing will be right. I think in that period, that was when I wrote my first book. That was when I
ran your marathon.
Ran my marathon. So these are the things that happened during that period. And if it wasn't for that trigger, right, maybe these other things wouldn't have happened.
I'm sure behind the scenes, there were a lot more sort of grappling with the unknown, questioning, crying like, why is this happening? But the fact that you were able to turn your pain into strength and to translate it into positive energy, I think that's really inspiring. And it brings to mind this beautiful Brené Brown quote who says, staying vulnerable is a risk we have to take if we want to experience connection. And I think for you as a public figure, that might be even more daunting, right? Because you have fans and followers, and to hear you sort of put yourself out there like that, I think that gives them the added strength as well. So how did this, opening up and speaking out about the divorce help you with your own healing process?
Okay. Brené Brown also said, speak from the scar, not the wound. So I think there was, of course, a couple of years where I didn't talk about it. Not because of anything, just like who wants to, want to hear about it in that sense. But I think you are speaking from the scar, so it's a lot better. You can talk to it one-on-one, but maybe I wasn't ready to speak about it broadly, publicly. But I do, share with it with people at that point. So you just know when the timing is right, when you're ready to speak about it. People know me one-on-one, would know the situation. Also, I work in radio. So when you work in radio and people hear your voice, okay, I teach this, right? You talk about your tone. Imagine you are miserable. It comes across on air. So in that 4 hours where I am supposed to get into a state, and that really helped save my life. So for 4 hours, you just have to be on an upbeat mode and not think about it. Not that it's not there, but you have to realize that you can sound really miserable or you can just get into that state. So I think that really helped me. The 4 hours of being on air while this is all going on really helped me as well. So understanding that you can change your state doesn't change the situation, but you can change your state. And this is from taking one of my many, many courses from NLP, where you understand that you can change your state and your frame of mind. And the work, thank God, made me do that. I think if I was still in my day-to-day job, the corporate job, right, there's no outlet, there's no need to be like this, then my state probably wouldn't be the same. But because I was on air, I had to make sure that it doesn't come across on air, right? So that really helped. So everything sort of came together, I guess. Yeah.
What was that inner monologue that you told yourself in your stage of grieving, as you woke up every morning, preparing yourself to go to work?
I think it was definitely prayer at the beginning of the day. Even you say, okay, 4 hours on air, right? Then after you say, okay, I'll cry after. I'll cry after.
Hold the tear ducts.
Time your tears, right? You can do that. So I get into my work mode. I'm going to be interviewing someone in the moment. So then you start preparing for that. So you just get into that frame of, I have to do this. And of course, I needed to keep my job, ma. So, you've got to make sure that still comes across professionally. And I have to say, my ex-boss, Malik Ali, I have to say at that period, he just said, did you need to take time off? And I said, no, I don't want to take any time off. I think I'll be more miserable at home. So he actually said, okay, continue. So he was really good and supportive that way, right? For me, it was actually work helped. There was definitely no keeping it inside. There's none of that, not showing it to the world in that sense. It's okay. Just that on air, you're talking about business. There's no need to bring your love life into it. So, but with friends, everything, support structure is very important. So I had good friends that I could speak to. I had my spiritual community that I could speak to. So I had that support, family support. My ex-mom-in-law was still staying with me, supporting me in that sense. I had that support. And it is important that when you're going through a period of grief, you're not in it alone, right? Be open to getting help. And that's being vulnerable, because I need help. So
Well, Freda, that's a perfect segue in coming into your BFM season of your life because freedom matters. I know
Yes.
that's a very good standout line as well. And, so for yourself, after working in IBM for a comfortable, what was it, 10, 11 years, you then decided to take a very, I would say, risky move with a 30% pay cut from IBM to join BFM 89.9. At that time, Malaysia's very first business radio station. You were one of the first few employees, I believe. While it was a very risky move, it was evident that you saw the potential in it, I feel. The thing that stood out for me as well is that you were very intrigued about the possibilities and potential where you could create your shows covering entrepreneurship as well as personal development, topics which are very close to your heart, right? You covered the show on enterprise as well as Her Vantage, which is on women of leadership as well as influence. So, share with our audience a little bit about that thought process and what made you decide to take that risk to come on board BFM, and how did you know it was the right decision?
The first call I got was from Noel Lim and says, there's this new radio station that's happening. I said, owned by who? The usual. I said, no, independent. Okay. The owner wants to meet you. Okay. But before that, where are you located was very important. very important. And they said, Bandar Utama. Let's talk because it's down the road from where I live.
Strategic location.
Even IBM was very strategic. IBM was very strategic because I was working from home from way back when, right? So it was very strategic, and that was the reason when I decided to meet up with Malik and all that. Would you believe I did the Gideon test? Okay, so the Gideon test was like, at that time, working in IBM, there is this thing called the sabbatical. And this was a really, really crucial decision. Of course, the comforts, 11 years with a company that gives you a lot of, stability. Then I had one of my seniors said, why don't you ask your boss for a sabbatical? And a sabbatical in that organization is not a benefit. It is a benefit. It depends on your manager. Discretionary. And at that point, I was in between that, I was doing a role which I did not enjoy at all. Nothing with the people, just that role I didn't enjoy. And so I talked to this boss of mine and I said, I'm going to apply for a 2-year sabbatical and I want to join this radio station. And it got approved. So it was a 2-year sabbatical, which still paid for my medical and dental. And I was technically still employed by IBM while working at BFM.
Wow.
You had a cushion then.
I had a
to fall
cushion.
back,
So if it all didn't work out, I had that.
Wow.
That was the okay, if the sabbatical doesn't get approved, I won't take the job.
The Gideon
It's like a
test indeed.
assignment.
I know. I tested God.
Yeah, wow.
And then
he showed up.
He showed up. And I said, okay, I guess there's no reason why I can't do this. If it all doesn't work out, it all disappears, I still have that company. So it wasn't all so brave in that sense, but still. And I think it was like 1 year after that, they say, hey, you want to come back or not? There's this role. I say, it's okay lah, I'll continue. But you never know. So yes, I did the Gideon test.
And it paid off. One of the things we've also heard you say that you ask yourself each morning as you went to work is, what is one thing that you would learn today? So what are some of your biggest, I'm sure there were many over the course of 15 years. What are some key learnings that you love to share with our audience?
It was a very exciting time to have been in that station at that period because we also covered the current affairs. We know we're going through all this political developments during that phase. The startup scene has just appeared. There's this buzz happening. I interviewed my taxi
Before,
way before, and to see these companies, all the, like the unicorn, the Kasam, some that have disappeared. So, I mean, it's just so interesting to have seen these journey. I remember interviewing this guy at 21 years old and I met him again. And then he's now 36 years old. 36, your father of 2. And I'm like, wow, that's what happens in 15 years. So it's just interesting to see the growth of people, the friendships that I have made, the connections that I have made. And every day, like, what am I going to learn? It's just each day, a person comes on air. Let's talk about Open for Business. Someone that took the guts and started a business, whether it's just a cupcake business, but you took the guts and I have got something to learn from you. Where do you get the courage? What are you looking at? What are the aspects of business? So you hear a lot. And then usually sometimes they do all the politically correct answers and you finish there. And then we start talking. This is the problem, lah. The staff challenges, lah. The supply chain. We cannot
All
get
the behind the scenes
We cannot
stuff.
get the stock from this country. You know what happened during the pandemic? You hear all these stories behind the scenes because you start having a connection. Of course, I will bring up these questions, right? But sometimes a little bit more nitty-gritty off the air. You learn so much from F&B, from new ideas that have come about. Like, who would have thought that was a business? Just strange things you think is strange. I mean, the whole idea of Grab was strange, right? Initially, so they were talking about the early days, because the adoption of smartphones wasn't in yet, the anger of taxi drivers. Were you guys the anger of taxi
I
drivers?
remember that the
right?
wrath of the drivers, they were like protesting.
Yes,
they were
the
so
wrath of
angry.
the taxi drivers, and then after that, trying to get them to be on this but not everybody had smartphones at that time.
Oh, yeah.
So to see this, like the stories and how they were trying to get people in just from Grab in Indonesia, and all the taxi drivers obviously of a different income status, and then they said they were all in a room sitting on the floor trying to get drivers on board and all that. So just all these stories that you've heard, and to see that how they've grown, and even those that haven't grown, maybe they've gone on to do other businesses, maybe they've gone on to do something. I think I love that. Maybe it rubbed off on me, that entrepreneurial spirit, that freedom. I think in personal development, the authors that I have spoken to, and I love personal development. Some I've met face to face, some I've done online, but just every conversation is wow, every day is an aha moment. So that's what really excites me. So even moving into this new space in covering sustainability, does it give me that aha? It does. It does give me an aha, and that's important for me, right? It's every day an aha, like aha, I didn't know this place has a studio.
Although you've been here so many times, this is the first
I
time
did not
discovering
know.
the
At the
studio.
Asia School of Business. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I can really resonate with the buzz that you described, at BFM. I had the privilege to intern there for a short while with the Morning Run show, and it was such an exhilarating and exciting time. At that time as well, like having this sort of talk radio, focused on business, that was a very, very novel concept in Malaysia. What was it like when you did your very first interview? Like, how was the whole experience?
Oh my goodness me. Okay, bad. I mean, yeah, of course.
us.
Okay, so like whenever you do radio or TV news, you're scripted. So you're prompter. So cool lah. So when you're on radio, then you are doing interviews. So you got your list of questions line up. You ask all the questions ready, and then you're like, okay.
What else?
I'm done.
And that was the thing. That was a skill I wanted to learn, to be impromptu and to be able to dig further, to be able to explore when to listen, or this person said this, okay, I want to prod a little further. So these were the skills that I wanted to learn. And because you've got a time to fill and everything, and that was one of the reasons I also wanted to join, to be able to speak impromptu, but not impromptu dumbly, not impromptu with depth and everything. And then you got your headphones on, and you're listening and you hear this loud voice. So whenever my guests come on, right, I have got the headphones on to make sure the volume is right. But I always tell my guests, don't put on the headphones, because when they hear their own voice, they can't concentrate. They can't concentrate on what they're saying because they're listening to their own voice. So skills you learn like that. But for sure, it was terrible. I thought it was terrible. But you learn, you improve. You've got to listen to yourself and improve. Yeah.
And in your whole career as a business broadcast journalist, you've done close to 10,000 interviews, and with very notable thought leaders, to list a few: Simon Sinek, Nobel Peace Prize winner Muhammad Yunus of Grameen Bank, and of course Prime Minister of Finland, and former GE CEO Jack Welch as well. And we've heard you say a couple of times, one of your most memorable interviews was with Nick Vujovic. But we're really curious to hear from you. What was maybe an interview that was particularly memorable for the opposite reason? So, a boo-boo happened or it went south. What was
okay.
that?
No boo-boo on air, the boo-boo before. Okay, there's an interview with 3 parties, okay? So this particular Dato', so this Dato' turns up first, and then these 2 other people turn up later on. So the idea was that there was a forum, which he organizes, and then after that there was a manufacturer which supports this forum, and there was a competition for a student that supports this industry. So it's coming in at different times, right? Ideally, of course, they should all arrive on time. So I'm repeating myself again, and I said, okay, what I'm going to do, Dato, is I said, I'm going to ask you these questions. So just to set the stage, because I'm going to talk to you as the organizer of the event, the industry, what it's worth. Although I know what it's worth, I'll let you say what it's worth, and then after that, it links in very nicely with the manufacturer, blah, blah, blah. And then the guy goes on and says, hey, why are we getting people who don't know the industry, the interview, or something like to that effect, right? When I'm explaining this before we go on air, it just sounds smoothly. That's my thought process. And he goes into this, and I just banged the table. Well, I just said, Dato, I know my job.
Ooh, you tell him.
I said, I know my job.
Wow.
Okay. And then, because it's just, he's just a pompous person. I know my job. Right? And then, so then he behaved. That was it. But on air, that sounded
Perfect. No one knew about the behind the scenes.
No behind the scenes.
And you really have to learn the skills of reading personalities as well, right? To decide what kind of approach, whether you need to just be assertive and firm and tell it like it is, or, go a bit more on the delicate route.
If it was
as well.
just him, it's fine. But because there were other parties involved who were probably not comfortable on air, as to, you know what I mean? Like they've never been exposed to media, the other two people. So I'm trying to get everybody to be comfortable. So there's a reason why I'm doing that, just to set the stage. There's a reason, right? So that's my job. If it was just him, we could have just bantered.
And something that you have mentioned very briefly is on your exercise that you do on an annual basis of the Wheel of Life. So maybe let's get you to share a little bit for our listeners and our audience who might not be familiar with this concept or this tool of the Wheel of Life. Would you share with them what it is and how it has impacted your life?
Okay, so the Wheel of Life basically covers 8 aspects. It looks into your faith, it looks into your finance, it looks into family, friends, fun, personal growth. I'm missing 2 other things, but you go through it, right?
Google it,
go Google it, right? So these are even community. Maybe that's an important aspect as well. I do some things that gives me fulfillment in that area. With world vision and all that. So all these things really matter because we are not one-dimensional people. That's it. We're not your career cannot define you. Your name card cannot define you. So that's just one aspect of your life. What gives you fulfillment and scheduling fun? People don't stop to do that. And I schedule fun. It sounds terrible. Sounds so wrong,
This
right?
is an advice that we'll, definitely take on board.
Schedule fun, and fun does not have to be expensive. Fun is time out. I just came back from holiday, that's 3 weeks, and I realized I do need 3 weeks. 1 week, I'm still on calls. I brought my laptop with me. I was still on calls, but so it took time to decompress, right? To decompress, and then, okay, I'll get back to you, and then now I have to, and then I said, okay, I've scheduled things, so I have to come back and reschedule the calendar because the timing's all wrong. But you really have to make time for other things, because that aspect, that season in my life is, what's the point of having all your career to turn around and say, hey, where's my family? And I think that the breakdown of the marriage also has a little bit of too focus in one area and not spending time nurturing that relationship with my ex-husband. That has also my doing, right? So now I make sure that spending time with friends, there's some friends that I meet, we can chat forever, but we will have to schedule a quarter. We will, every quarter, we make a point to catch up. We're also busy, but every quarter, we'll finally sit down and just enjoy. Because I don't want to just, hi, bye. Then that's also not spending time together. So we actually, okay, this afternoon is free. We're going to spend time. We're going to enjoy our lunch. We're just going to talk about life. So all these things you have to take into consideration and schedule it in. Schedule fun. Very important.
Very, very good advice. And it's something we laugh about, right? Like, haha, who schedules fun? It's meant to be spontaneous. But I think one thing that I'm taking away from what you're sharing, Freda, is that you really have to be intentional about it. Because so often life can just cruise by. And, next thing we know, we're saying, oh, where has the year 2024 been?
Yes.
And we just get caught up, right? And we forget that amidst all the things that are happening, we forget to prioritize the really important pieces of the pie from this Wheel of Life exercise.
You have little goals and little things like that in the same time, but you also got to live for the present, right? So I would say Q1, yay, pretty good.
All right, and on to the next quarter.
How do you do all of it while prioritizing, your spiritual life, or your different priorities in the Wheel of Life without feeling stretched or burnt out? What are some sort of self-care mechanisms you put in place?
You'd be surprised. I don't do too many things. Actually, I don't do
Doesn't sound like it.
Yeah,
I know.
wait a minute.
I don't do too many things. I actually things are kind of planned. Even in a day, I try to do maybe 3 things at most. 3 major things at most, right? In a day. If it's from working from home, I know that I'll be doing this, and you plan for certain big projects. There'll be some months when you're busy. For example, my show, I've actually recorded in advance, because I know that will be a busy period. I wrote about that in my book as well, and you should know this.
Yes.
What are the big rocks in your life? I actually so in the morning, I spend 2 hours exercising, right? Walk, do some fitness, whatever. So that's the big rock. Exercise has to be in there. Your prayer life has to be in there. So these are the big rocks that I've got to spend on. Then after that, what are the smaller things that you have to do? And then before you put in the sand. So make sure the big rocks are in. What is important? What is priority? Another thing, little books that I've read and important, and this you have to find out for yourself. What's important, not urgent. Okay? If you plan for what's important, not urgent, so that it doesn't one day become important and urgent. For example, you don't take care of your health right now, it's important, it's not urgent. I didn't have to go and exercise this morning. In 10 years from now, it'll be urgent if I haven't taken care of my health. Important and urgent, right? So things like that, which doesn't seem important, is important. But try to do it so you know this will be important. I don't want it to get urgent. So you look at what is important with your deadlines and all that and plan in advance.
I myself did a Wheel of Life exercise for the first time late last year. And I would say it was an excellent tool just for you to take stock of your life.
Right.
Again, being intentional to put a pause, schedule something in your calendar for yourself.
Yes.
To do a little bit more reflection. I think being able to kind of put a rating of, between 0 to 10 of how fulfilled you are in each areas of your life, but more importantly, for the areas that you're not finding fulfillment in, what are you going to do about it?
Right. And it's very personal to
Yeah.
each person, right? What you want to do. For the longest time, I think I didn't have fun. So that was important for me to have fun and to have joy, to do these things. And I get a buzz from travel and learning new things. So whatever it may be, right? Dancing, if it makes you happy, because that's also going to give you happy hormones.
Yeah. And so here on Explore This, we're huge advocates about talking on not just the highs of your professional as well as your personal lives, but also the lows and the challenges, the setbacks that we encounter, the mud thrown in our face sort of difficulties and hardships. And you've often also referenced having the courage to fail in your book, but your attitude is to always learn from that failure as well as improve from it. So on that note, the place we want to go with that is, what is a recent and pivotal setback or failure or challenge that you've recently experienced that have taught you something new about yourself?
When I try to go for certain things and certain things don't happen, I just say, okay, maybe this is not the time. Maybe this is not the time. This is not meant to be. This door has closed. It'll be like if my son didn't do well at university, then I'll be like, where did I go wrong? But that's not within my control. Thankfully, he passed second year, third year. I'm trying to give an example where what you would see, and that's my attitude, what you think is a setback is not a setback. I don't know if I wrote about it in the book. And everybody in my family, born in Brunei, this is my life, this is it. Do you think this is going to be it? Everybody in my family had permanent residence, my parents, my 3 older siblings, except me. To think that even after finishing school, there's no opportunity for me. So my whole family could be living in Brunei except me. And you were miserable because that's all you've known. This is my life. I'm born here. This is my life. And then you look back 30, 40 years from there. Okay, you closed that door. You closed that door for a reason. So something that hasn't happened is like water off a duck's back in the sense of, okay, maybe not meant to be. And you've got something else planned for me. So something doesn't happen. You meet a man, right? And it doesn't work out. Okay, God, not the one, huh?
Let go and let God.
Let go and let God, right? It's okay, that's your plan, right? So I think that's the thing, right? I mean, if that's the case, for example, right? I haven't remarried, I haven't met anyone yet. Okay. You never know. You never haven't met. So but it's like, okay, and to accept maybe it's not meant to be. Wow. And to just accept that maybe that's not your plan for me.
It brings to mind that phrase, right? Like, God give me the strength to change what I can and accept what you cannot. So
right?
Whatever that's within your sphere of control, yes, do your best of your abilities to make it happen. But whatever's out of your control, there's only so much you can do.
Right? And maybe that's not his plan for me because he's planned certain things for me, which I had not planned. Getting into broadcasting was not my plan, right? So just to trust in that process, you know? So,
Freda, we started off the interview asking you about the stage of life that you're in. And now we want to ask you about your word of the year. And we've heard you share that the word of the year is elevate, right? So what are some ways that you're elevating yourself right now?
So doing different things, meeting different kinds of people, getting on a board. What does it take to get on a board? I don't know, right? I mean, I know I have to just sort of like, okay, there's a 30% club. What courses do I have to take? You know, that's one aspect. So the kind of people that you meet, the conversations that I will have to be different. Understanding startups, let me now start talking to VCs. How do they think? Angel investors, how do they think? So that's just the work side. The holidays, the friends, the people that sometimes you have to get rid of some friends. Some people who drag you down, you got to start creating boundaries, everything. So everything I've got to start thinking of at a different level. If I don't know what is a different level, find out, talk to people at that level, learn from them. Hi, can I buy you lunch? I want to learn something from you. So that, I think, to me, is to elevate everything, whether it's my health, whether it's my, finances, whether everything, to take it to the next level. So just next level.
So what's next level after a full marathon? Curious.
No more.
Asking for a friend.
Done.
Triathlon?
Done. No. No. I think just being able to exercise every day and keeping fit, reducing the visceral fat. Okay, that's the goal.
All right, Freda. So, as we're wrapping up today's episode, one question that we love to ask all our guests is, what's one thing that you've recently explored that surprised you?
South Africa.
Tell us. Tell our audience. All the undiscovered gems.
I guess people always have this fear, right, of South Africa. And there are places that aren't the safest as well. Thank God I have friends who are there. So I stayed with them for a couple of days. But then, the ringgit actually stretches there. Once you get there, it is a beautiful place. There are animals everywhere. I mean, apart from going to your game reserve and all that, right? You just go to certain places, you see penguins and dolphins and seals and all that. And people are very joyful. Despite what's going on, when you talk to people, there's a certain joy and a great customer service. So that was a new discovery. That was my opportunity to land in, I want to get on the African continent done. And I think sometimes you just have to leave the country to also appreciate what you've got in Malaysia. The other thing that was such a discovery, they have this thing called load shedding. So load shedding is where the whole country, there's certain times of the day where you don't have electricity because the electricity has to be shared. What a concept. Here in Malaysia, where we don't have electricity for 30 minutes and the whole world, the uproar. I was like, wow.
Flip stable.
We've got this thing here in Malaysia. And, we're talking about renewables. We're talking, of course, I cover sustainability. We talk about these things. And this is happening in a country and how that affects productivity, how that affects businesses, how that affects everything, right? And so little things like that. Wow, Malaysia, we don't have to do load shedding.
Freda, in this discussion, you have taken us through so much from, vulnerability in some of the most challenging times of your life to taking leaps of faith to serendipity and wheel of life, prioritizing, scheduling fun. That's just so much to chew on. But what is one final thing that you'd like to leave with our listeners of Explore This?
I think just, be grateful. I think this is really important. Be grateful. Don't covet. Don't look at other people, right? I heard this from YB Hannah Yo the other day. Was talking about, find your space. And in your space, grow in that space and be grateful for what you've got. Seriously, be grateful for what you've got. You've got your health. My goodness, when you see people who don't have it, if we got three square meals a day, be grateful for these little things. I don't take that for granted, that I'm never starved. So little things we can be grateful for, and I think that's the spirit to have. I think sometimes when you travel, you also come back and be appreciative of the country that you've got as well. So gratitude.
So beautifully said, Freda. And, it's a privilege for us. Not every day we get to turn the tables on a seasoned interviewer, journalist.
That's right.
So we're so happy to have you here. So thank you so very much, Freda, for coming on Explore This podcast.
Thank you.
If you stuck around to the end of this episode, we want to say thank you for exploring with us. And if you don't already, please follow us on Spotify, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and review, and most importantly, share this episode with your friends.
We'd love to hear from you, so you can also connect with us on Instagram using the Instagram handle Explore This Podcast, ACTSPLORE This Podcast. New episodes for Explore This drops every alternate Mondays at 8 p.m. See you then!